Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer, Matt Bernier. The Saturday race of the day, of course, is the Grade 1 Preakness, and our coverage is presented by the Maryland Jockey Club, which is offering tremendous guaranteed multi-race pools. A $250,000 early pick 5 starting on Saturday's race number 2. $500,000 is the guaranteed pool in the middle pick 4 starting in race number 6. There is a $1 million late pick 5 guaranteed pool starting in race number 9. And then the big one that you really want to get involved in, $2 million, the guaranteed late pick 4 pool starting in race number 10 and culminating in our race of the day presented by the Maryland Jockey Club, the Grade 1 Preakness Stakes, featuring Justify as he continues his Triple Crown quest. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 $1.5 million Preakness Stakes. We've got 7 contenders for Justify. For free formulator past performances for the Preakness, head on over to the Race of the Day event page on DRF.com. Download them and handicap along with us. We'll take this field in post-position order. Mike, the number 1 Quip, you liked his performance in the Tampa Bay Derby when he beat Flame Away, and then you really weren't enamored with his race in the Arkansas Derby. My 2 questions for you. What kind of trip does he work at from the rail? What kind of chance does he have against Justify?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's just really up against it now in this point. You're right, I did like his Tampa Bay Derby, if only because it was his first start of the year, and it just felt like a nice step forward for a very lightly raced horse. His Arkansas Derby didn't do a lot for me. That pace wasn't fast. He sat right up on the pace with Magnum Moon and was just really no match for that horse. I was actually surprised that he survived for second in that race. He just didn't run that well in there. And if he shows up Saturday in a race with, it's just going to have a lot more pace with Justify in here. I just don't see how he's even close to good enough to win this race.
He's got a lot of things going against him in here. A forward running style is not going to work against Justify. Likely to be in behind a few horses, maybe catching some kickback. Probably not going to work advantageous. And again, keep in mind, he was going to run in the Kentucky Derby, but he needed more time, and this is where they ultimately landed. I don't like him.
Matt, we're expecting a solid to fast pace in the Preakness, and that could really work to the advantage of the number 2 Lone Sailor, especially if the 2 morning line favorites hook up early on the back stretch. And remember, Lone Sailor's maiden win came by open lengths over a sealed, sloppy track, and we're expecting a lot of wet weather in the Baltimore area on Saturday.
He's run well on a wet track on both occasions in his career. I have to be honest, I thought he ran just fine in Kentucky. He was stacked up a little bit going into the far turn. All things considered, he stayed down on the rail and came on with a little bit of a run. If you think the pace heats up, he can certainly pick up the pieces. To me, he's one, if you're playing an exact, the try or a super, you have to use him underneath.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't really have that much more to add to it. I mean, I think Lone Sailor is a pretty good horse. I thought his Derby was fine for what it was. I don't think that it makes him necessarily any more competitive than it does in the Preakness against the 1-2 finishers from that race. A wet track, could it help him? Sure. I guess if Good Magic decides to take on Justify a little sooner in this race, that could help him as well. But he's just another horse in this race who has a lot of work to do to gain on the Derby 1-2 finishers.
Trainer Tom Amoss has hit the board at a price in the Preakness in the past. My Loop third in 2013. The number 3, Mike, is Sporting Chance, one of 2 in here trained by the great D. Wayne Lucas, who most recently won the Preakness with Oxbow in 2013. Sporting Chance is a horse that makes his own trouble because he's a little bit nutty. You hit him with the whip, he drifts out. He had significant trouble, I thought, last time out in the Pat Day Mile. Where do you think he's going to be placed early in this race as he stretches out? And where do you think overall his talent ability lies? He is a Grade 1 winner.
You know, I think he's a good horse. I don't know if I really feel like he's going to be ultimately better off going longer than he is shorter. But I think he's a talented horse. He did not get a good trip, I didn't think, or a very good ride anyway in the Pat Day Mile last time. He's just one of those horses, to me, though, the real problem I have with him, Dan, is that I think he's good. I also feel like he's a good horse when they use his speed. And they, you know, I've been dying for them to use his speed as a 3-year-old, and they haven't done it yet. And I ultimately don't think the Preakness is the right race to do it in. I still think he's pretty good, though. I want to throw him into the mix somewhere underneath.
Sounds like Lucas is saying they're going to let him roll, whatever that means. I'd imagine he's going to be forwardly placed. I don't think he has any chance to win this race, but perhaps he's a bit of a fly in the ointment.
Every year we have the local hope, and the number 4 Diamond King is this year's local hope, trained by John Service, who won the Preakness with Kentucky Derby winner Smarty Jones. We do have a positive formulator fact for this 30-1 morning line shot. Service over the past 5 years with 3-year-old Last Out winning Dirt Routers going second off the layoff, 33%, a big ROI. This horse scored in the Tessio last time out, Matt, but in slow time, and he's kind of a pace horse that might be up against it, chasing a horse that might have a little more quality with a similar running style in Justify.
He hasn't done anything wrong other than just draw a line through that Kentucky Jockey Club where he dumped the rider going into the first turn. He's a likable little horse, but I mean, just call a spade a spade. He's not fast enough to win this race.
Right. I mean, there's just not that much to say about it. I think Diamond King has the potential to do some good things down the line. I don't know that the Preakness is necessarily the right race for him.
Second choice on the morning line's the number 5, Good Magic, trained by Chad Brown, who of course won this race last year with Cloud Computing. Good Magic, last year's 2-year-old champion, based on his only victory, that being in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He ran just fine in the Kentucky Derby, Mike. Just couldn't get to Justify. Do you think we'll see any sort of change in tactics here?
I mean, I don't know what the change in tactics could be. He kept relatively close to a pretty good pace there in the Derby. I actually felt like, all things considered, this horse ran an excellent race in Kentucky. He just wasn't quite good enough to get to Justify. Took a real shot at that horse coming to the stretch. Justify just sort of turned him away and held him off all through the stretch. I still thought Good Magic ran really well. I'm not going to be, super surprised. I think Justify is really good, but I'm not going to be shocked if Good Magic finds a way to turn the tables on him on Saturday, because he is a good horse. It just feels like he's going to have to find a way to gain a few lengths on that horse. Maybe it's just the fact that Justify regresses a little bit, and maybe that's all it will take. But it feels like that almost has to happen if he's going to win this race on Saturday.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I'll be a little bit surprised if he wins this race. I think he has to go. He's got to do the dirty work, and I understand he pretty much did that in Kentucky. So I suppose there's a scenario where there's a 3-length switch here, but I just would be stunned if it actually happened.
Matt, the 6 Tenfold goes out for Steve Asmussen, winner of his first 2 starts. Thrown to the wolves a little bit in the Arkansas Derby in start number 3. Far from embarrassed, pressing the pace a little bit and then tiring late behind Magna Moon. This is a pretty big test. I think this horse has a race in the future, but I wonder if this is a case of too much too soon.
Yeah, I agree. Throwing him to the wolves here, it didn't work out in the Arkansas Derby. This is going to be an even more difficult position. I wonder what the running style is going to be. I would imagine mid-pack, try to make a run. I think they'll be thrilled if they can get a piece, and even at that point, I'm a little bit unsure.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. I mean, it's just one of those situations where he's just another horse showing up for this Preakness, and the Preakness didn't come up that strong outside of the top 2 finishers from the Derby, but he's just another horse who he's got to find a way to run a lot better if he's going to be effective in this spot.
Now, we know Quip has speed, we know Diamond King has speed, but the Timeform US pace projector says that they're not going to fool around with the Derby winner, the number 7 Justify, who also has a lot of natural speed. Timeform US's red bar indicates that they believe this pace will be fast. They also believe that Justify will be on the lead. Would you be surprised if Mike Smith tries to sit off another horse? I think he's got to go for it, right?
Yeah, I don't see why he would even play any games and sit off another horse. Maybe somebody just goes on a dead scent inside of him, and that's fine, I guess, for Justify. I think he's going to be on the front in here. And I just think he's obviously way the horse to beat, and I couldn't find a way to really go against him. The things that he really has going for him, aside from just his massive amount of natural ability, is just the fact that where is everybody? I mean, this was one of those crops of 3-year-olds that everybody was talking up all year long leading into the Derby. Everybody and their brother wants to run in that race, and then 2 weeks later, nobody wants to show up in the Preakness. It's almost embarrassing. This is not a good field. He was better than them in Kentucky, and he doesn't even have nearly the amount of horses to beat in this spot. He's way, way, way the horse to beat here.
Quick question for you, Matt, real quick. We obviously know a wet track was no problem for this horse on 2 prior occasions. What about the rumors circulating about the foot?
I mean, it didn't look good when you saw that little video snippet that we saw with him favoring that foot, but clearly he's been out on the racetrack jogging around. I don't think there's any sort of residual effects from that. And kind of like Mike said, I go through this race 15 different times trying to envision a scenario where he doesn't win this race. Unless something terrible happens, I can't imagine him losing. I can't figure out a way. If they go fast, he can go fast. He can sit off of a horse if somebody's just hell-bent on the lead. I just think it's very, very difficult to envision a scenario realistically where he loses.
Completing this field of 8, Wayne Lucas's Bravazo, who ran better than a lot of people thought, went 6th in the Kentucky Derby. And I wonder if Mr. Lucas is going to try similar tactics, Matt, in this spot. Just take him back, try to make one run. He's already said he's going to let his other horse roll. Maybe Bravazo tries to pick up the pieces, the winner of the Risen Star.
I have to be honest, I liked his race in Kentucky. He was wide every step. I know it was a wet track. He seemed to have put himself fine over that. And I'm going to basically draw a line through the Louisiana Derby. If you do that, the Derby was essentially his first start since February. I think he takes a forward move here, and at one should be a big, big number. I want to use him in 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, I can see this horse getting a piece in this race too. I thought his Derby was fine for what it was. Not that he was ever a real factor in that race, and he got one of the cleaner trips in the race as far as the closers go. But he still ran fine in this race, and there's just, outside of the top two, there's just not that much else.
Top selections for the Grade 1 Preakness, the second jewel in racing's Triple Crown. No surprise here, unanimous selections for Justify. We're expecting there's going to be a Triple Crown run in 3 weeks at Belmont. Matt, top 4 picks, how you betting the race?
7, 8, 2, 5 for me. I think the only way to try to make some value if you're going to use Justify on top is to try to get good magic out of second or third. I'm going to do that and use both Lone Sailor and Bravazo.
Mike, Justify on top. You had him in the Derby 2 weeks ago. What's your top 4?
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything Matt said, but I put Good Magic second. I just feel like the Derby 1-2, probably run 1-2 again here. I went Sporting Chance, Lone Sailor underneath.
I agree with Mike in the top 2. I just can't get past the Kentucky Derby exacta. 7, 5, 2, and 1 for me in the Grade 1 Preakness Stakes. Our coverage presented by the Maryland Jockey Club. Gigantic guaranteed multi-race pools all day long, including the big one, the $2 million late pick 4, starting with race number 10 and ending in the Preakness. And I'm sure a lot of folks are going to be singling Justify and the anchor leg of that $2 million late pick 4. Approximate post time for the second jewel of the Triple Crown, the Grade 1 Preakness featuring Justify, 6:48 Eastern. Best of luck.